Justine Abshire, the kindergarten teacher and newlywed, was found dead on a rural Virginia road after midnight 5 miles from her home, an apparent victim of a hit and run. But little about the accident scene made sense. Trooper Hobbs scoured the road looking for any of the telltale signs he usually sees from a car accident.
I'm looking for vehicle debris, any kind of skid marks, things like that. I've got none of that. No paint chips on her clothing, no tire marks on the road, no broken glass, no broken plastic from headlights.
And you almost always find that kind of debris?
Yes, sir.
So you were curious about things you weren't seeing, huh?
Correct.
Not only was there no debris, there was relatively little blood in the road.
She had huge lacerations on her head, should have been blood everywhere. And basically there were just 2 little small puddles of blood. Not a lot of blood for what should have been there.
And that didn't make sense either.
Right, correct.
The victim's husband, Eric, told the trooper that he and his wife had had a minor spat that night, and she was driving around to blow off some steam when her car broke down. Okay, but when Trooper Hobbs checked out the Mustang, he found nothing apparently wrong with it.
I've got the keys to her car. Well, let's see if the car, is broken down. So I put the keys in ignition. It starts right up. We think, well, maybe it won't go into gear. So I put it into gear. It rolls forward.
Car's working fine.
Car's working fine.
An already strange hit-and-run case was now looking even more complicated. The husband, meanwhile, Eric Abshire, had been out in the road for hours.
He wanted it hurried up. It was, you need to hurry up and get her out of the road.
But an emotionally exhausted husband who wanted to get his wife's body off the road and into a funeral home was perhaps understandable. The trooper's work out here on the scene was wrapping up. He'd turn his notes over to senior investigator, Special Agent Mike Jones of the Virginia State Police. Jones would run the case from here out.
What did I think I had here? Thought I had a lot of work to do.
One of Jones's first tasks was to accompany the school teacher's body to the medical examiner's office. With little of forensic value from the scene itself, the ME science would start to explain what had happened to this young woman. An accident, foul play. When the troopers spoke with Eric at his house just hours after he'd come upon Justine's body, he talked about a grim scenario that had occurred to him. Maybe someone unknown had happened upon his wife, a woman in distress.
He offers a theory that Justine was out on the side of the road and that some unknown individual was attracted to her beauty and pulled up and tried to abduct her. Maybe she was running off.
Do you have any suspicion of what might have happened?
I like to think she got hit, and she wasn't scared the last seconds of her life, but I think that either one of these people or just somebody out drinking, driving, I think they drove by, saw a beautiful woman on the side of the road, went down, turned around, tried to get her in her car, and I think she got scared. I think she walked from it. They saw that she saw her face, and I think they hit her.
But at this stage of the investigation, it could be anything.
The range was wide open, and we had to start tracking in a direction that made sense.
The medical examiner, Dr. Todd Lukasevic, had performed dozens of autopsies on pedestrians hit by cars, but this victim appeared to be different.
You're unzipping the bag. Is there a moment when you say something like, I don't like what I'm seeing here?
Yes, almost instantly, when I saw the lack of blood on her clothing.
I said, what do I have here?
Exactly. I turned to my technician. This does not appear to be a typical hit and run. She had gaping lacerations to her head, her face. Those types of lacerations bleed profusely, and she had no blood on her clothing, no blood on her skin, and really no blood within the body bag.
So there's an absence of blood that catches your interest right away.
Correct.
And equally troubling, while there were more than 113 external injuries to her body, they weren't, he thought, consistent with someone standing and being struck by a vehicle. Was it possible Justine hadn't been a hit-and-run victim at all? How could that be?
You typically see a bumper bruise where the bumper hits the calf, the knee, and it's also going to cause a fracture underneath that bruise.
And when you see that kind of injury, you say, I know what that is.
Correct.
Did you see it on Justine Abshire?
No, I did not.
And there was more he wasn't finding.
You usually see tire tread on the skin or, more importantly, on the clothing. There was no evidence of glass, no evidence of transfer of paint chips or metal. There is no evidence whatsoever. There is actually no evidence of debris from the road, no pebbles, no asphalt, anything like that.
Yet with injuries this severe, he wasn't ruling out that a vehicle was somehow involved in Justine's death.
You get a little bit of a mystery. Your best guess is that there was a vehicle involved causing these injuries,
Correct.
but it didn't appear that that person was standing.
That is correct.
But if a vehicle had been involved in the kindergarten teacher's death, how? The ME needed more tests.
I was prepared to fill out the cause of death as blunt force trauma of the head, trunk, and extremities, but the manner of death, we needed further investigation.
He turned to Agent Jones, who'd also been taking notes throughout the autopsy.
I said, you have to treat this as a homicide. This is homicide until proven otherwise.
A homicide? A murder case. But where to start? If she'd been killed, by whom and for what reason? With so little to go on, Agent Jones called in all the troopers from the scene for a brainstorming session.
After we finished the autopsy at division headquarters and we had our round table, everybody was parted out to run in different directions.
What had happened to Justine Abshire? The crime scene and the autopsy could only tell the investigators so much.
I didn't by any means have enough to make any conclusions that day. I walked away with, well, I need to come back and inquire further.
Coming up, Justine's husband says he blames himself.
He said, well, you know, we had an argument. If I wouldn't have argued with her, then this wouldn't have happened.
When Dateline continues.